Welcome to the Tea Grannies. I'm Elise.
And I'm Mariah. Today we're going to chat about how to give good feedback. So pour yourself a cup of tea and let's get started.
Prologue. Benji. Benji thought he'd already experienced every way a person could die. There was nothing particularly terrible about this death, except that it was cold, and there were bugs in places he never wanted to see. Blood congealed in the frosty air, gummy where it calcified against blades of yellowed grass. In Revival, thoughts were always slow and inverted at first, no more than garbled noise that eventually reorganized into patterns. The brain was delicate, and he felt like he'd stirred it with a kitchen spoon. 2 hours, Ludwig said, clicking the timer off. The other boy was perched over him with the intensity of a crow, a piece of chewing gum wrung between his molars. Considering he'd just killed Benji with a bolt pistol, Ludwig looked like a kid in a candy shop. Longer than last time. They were categorizing the time between death. A perfectly normal game for two 18-year-old boys. Two boys that would never be anything but 18, which in hindsight was a mistake, at least in Benjamin's opinion. Ludwig didn't seem to care either way. Told you that brain injury takes longer. Benji's tongue felt fat and squat, slurring through his speech. His body burned, every finger twitching to life before he regained the ability to sit. The world spun, round and round into one long colliginous blur. The hell did we do? Benji wanted to ask. But Ludo had that look on his face like he was pleased they'd just ruined their lives. Pleasure was hard won for rich boys with rotten hearts. For Ludwig, it was nearly impossible. We could try burning, Ludo said, cringing. Sounds awful, though. This was such a good page.
I know! I was like, whoa! What a good one.
Right?
Very excited about it, actually.
Yeah. So what do you got for us? What's your feedback?
Well, my overall thoughts on this piece is what a submission. This one was a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
I read this when I was at work, and I completely missed my staff asking me questions multiple times. So I think you could say that I was very intensely interested. And one of the things I really love that really stood out to me about this piece is the word choices. So things like blood congealed and calcified against blades of yellowed grass are great examples of choosing the right word to evoke a certain feeling in your reader. And of course, I'm intrigued by the fact that I'm going to say his name wrong. Ludwig? Ludwig?
You got it.
Shot Benji. I'm getting like we're cursed immortals here together vibes, and I like really am very intrigued. Like I want to know what happens right now.
Yeah. Likewise. This one was so fun. My first thought, because I did the reading for this one first before I did comments. I like to read it out loud, and then I kind of settle into it, and then I'll read it again and start making notes.
Do it too. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
we're so funny.
And it's like we learned some good stuff together.
Yeah.
My first thought as I was reading it was like, I was finding it hilarious. My father has always been a little concerned and disturbed by my sense of humor. So if people are confused when I say this, like, join the line right behind him. But I found this piece really funny, and I know I wasn't necessarily supposed to, but like, I'm here for it. It's my dark humor brain is like, yes, this is what I want. I loved it. It's such a punchy start. There's like, when people say start in the middle of action, you know, the default is like, oh, gotta be a battle scene. But this is not that, but it is the middle of the action. It's dropping you right into the middle of it. It's not giving you context, and it starts to kind of give you pieces as you go. And it's this perfect balance of what is happening and oh my God. So yeah, I just really loved it. The two characters' voices are very distinct, very engaging. I could kind of pick up on the tone that they were using as I was reading it without even knowing the full context. There was like the first line of dialogue didn't have any context until after the fact, but when I was reading it in my head, I got the right tone on the first try. And yeah, so really, really well done. I'm getting dark academia vibes with this fantasy plot. Could be wrong about that. It could be a totally different setting, but that's kind of, without the context, that's where I'm putting it. So if anything's missing, maybe some setting hints. But I wouldn't want to go too deep into that because I think this is just such a strong start on its own.
Yeah.
And the rest of like the book cover and the summary and the art could all kind of communicate that a little bit for us. So you might not need to do much there. But I'm like picturing this in some old British school set in a castle somewhere. They're out on the grounds in like a forested area. And that's what I've got in my brain. Aside from that, the descriptions of death, like you said, absolute perfection. The descriptions of the resurrection of this character, of him coming back to life, were really, really well done. There's something about like the brain stirred by a kitchen spoon. I feel that. I feel that right now. So good.
It's Friday. We're so tired.
Yeah, exactly.
End of the week vibes.
Yeah. But as I say that, I want to emphasize, like, we didn't linger too long in those descriptions. They didn't just go on and on about anything. They were quick and punchy, but like you said, the word choice, that is what makes it. The word choice was so perfect that I have the vivid image that I need in my mind. I'm really hooked in, and it doesn't take me too long to get there. And then, yeah, pacing. We don't necessarily know what Benji and Ludwig are up to by the end of the first page, but we have a kind of a general idea of what's going on. And I'm expecting to find out at least a little bit on the next page of like why they wanted this. Apparently they wanted whatever this is, immortality or never aging past 18 or however that works, not being able to die. I'm okay with that reveal coming on page 2 instead of page 1. I think that's totally fine because of how strong this first page is. Like, I immediately want to keep reading, but I do think we need some tidbit of that, a hint, some context in the next page, to kind of ground the reader in a little bit more of what's happening. And then some like setting should come in there as well so that we know, like, I think they're in a forested area, but I don't know that it's actually specified. So some setting would be really important as well. Yeah, I don't think it's specified. So that I'm going to take back what I said earlier. I think we need at least a little something on the first page.
Yeah, just a little bit of setting. Like, I agree. Especially because Benji is talking, like, he's got like quite a few good descriptions and he's the one experiencing it. So it wouldn't be too hard to throw in a few things for setting. I think it would work really well. And one of my fun note that I had in here, I want this one to be the line that's on the back of the book, you know, that you get like a quote, you're like, ooh, that sounds enticing.
Yeah.
Like, pleasure was hard won for rich boys with rotten hearts. I just think that's just so good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
When I saw your comment on that, I was like, I want that paired with the next line for Ludwig, it was nearly impossible, because that's just like such a character hinty moment. I don't know entirely what that means, but it means something big for Ludwig. And that, to me, because it's on the first page, it's significant. It's going to come up later. It's going to be a big part of the plot. If the author isn't thinking in those terms, then maybe take some notes that that's what we're expecting because of how that's worded and how prevalent it is on this very important real estate placement of the story. So yeah.
And I also wanted to point out, because I don't know if either of us noticed when we read it, because we always notice this, it's a prologue.
Yes.
So I'm interested. I'm like, ooh.
Oh my God.
I did prologue.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
We didn't have notes.
Like,
what?
I know. That's because it didn't read like a prologue.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It reads like a first chapter.
I just noticed it.
Yeah. I would be so curious to see where this goes next, and like, wow. Because when I read it out loud, I do say prologue first. So I literally read the word prologue out loud to myself and did not register that, I don't like prologues generally. But kudos to author.
Full disclosure to the listeners, we are very tired recording this episode. We're hanging on. Like, we already had a tea break before we could even record. Like, that's how tired we are. We're like, we have to have tea. So forgive us for not harping on about the prologue like we normally would.
Breaking expectations. The shared brain cells just didn't have it in her today. Oh well.
Yeah, I think the our other friend that completes the trio must have the brain cell too.
Must.
I'll have to ask her.
Yeah, just blame her for that. Okay, but to
anyway,
wrap up, we both
great
really
submission.
love this piece. Yeah,
Mhm.
thanks for submitting. How to craft feedback that's actually useful.
Don't be a dick. I actually think that's my main advice. Ironically, the same thing people say when like if I have like relationship advice, like, don't asshole. Like I just, it's not hard.
Yeah, I'm leaving that in.
Yeah,
that is
okay.
That's it. Episode's over.
Right.
What more do you
all
need?
the life advice you need.
Yeah, we're not only.
Well, actually, no. If that's all the life advice, then I have to amend it and say, don't be an asshole unless someone deserves it. Then you can be an asshole.
But not during writing group.
Not during writing group.
No, we don't do that.
Nope. Going on to our actual more useful advice. I still think the don't be asshole still stands.
It still stands.
But anyway.
Yep.
On to why feedback is actually important.
Right. Right. Because we have things to say. Oh my goodness. All right. I'm going to follow that up. I'm going to sound really boring because that was great. But my first thing is like, it's the same principle as like why we enjoy or find it helpful to vent to our friends and rage to people online. Like, why do we do that constantly? Because I think the feedback we get from that brings value, whether that's like comfort from a friend, validation about something. Maybe someone shares something and is like, oh, that's an uncomfortable truth that I hadn't considered before. Now I have to change my perspective on that. Or whatever else. Not saying that arguments online are going to change anyone's perspectives about anything, but, you know, in-person conversations with your friends, right, might be a little bit more helpful. Yeah, so just that opportunity to see things through someone else's lens is a way of showing us things that we hadn't considered before. I think that is one of the most valuable parts of why feedback is helpful for writing.
I think so too, because like we all write from our personal point of view and like how we view the world. And some of us are more privileged than others, and sometimes stuff can come across as like not helpful or like asshole like or just tone deaf, because like you just are writing from your lived experiences.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Like if you were sitting down to say to a friend, like, hey, I'm not sure I said this and I said that. And they were like, well, yeah, maybe you would have left out that last bit. It kind of makes you sound like a jerk. And you're like, oh my God, thank you for telling me. It's a bit like that. We need it for our writing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking from experience, because we've been in a writing group together since we took a writing course together for several years now, that with the right critique group, with the right like feedback partners, that feedback not only improves the work itself, but it can help with the writer receiving it on the end of like growing in, not just growing in skills, but growing in confidence. I don't know about you, but when I am consistently getting some feedback from our group that, hey, you're doing this really well. Again, like you do this really well all the time. This is something I really like about your writing. Like I hear that regularly. And then there's other things where it's like, this is something I can work on. And this is something that keeps coming up that's a problem. But when that's balanced with that piece of like, at least you do this really well and you did it really well again, and I really like it. Like that's incredibly validating and is a feel-good thing that I can then carry forward into like, okay, my writing doesn't all just suck. It's not just trash. I can do this one thing really, really well, and I'll keep doing that.
It's the only thing I'm going to do in my writing.
Just descriptions everywhere.
Yeah. Me too. And the occasional like sassy dialogue.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's all you get.
Oh my God.
But I really think the confidence it can give other writers is probably the main driver behind getting feedback, like giving you getting confidence and then you getting other writers to gain in confidence. Because writing is one of those skills, like, I guess it technically, like, it can be taught, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think most of the learning is done by doing, receiving feedback, doing it better next time. And I think that's why I compare it to riding a lot, because riding is a bit like that. Like, you can jump a course and my coach will be like, okay, well, like, jumps 1 to 3 were really good. And then you got a little, like, did XYZ from jumps 4 to 6, and then you got it together again. So do it again, but this time make the middle part right.
Yeah.
You know, she says it better than that, but
sure.
You get it. And like, that's a bit what happens with writing too. And I think it's also a really nice way to improve, because I think if you just get someone reading your stuff like, oh, I liked it, it's not specific enough. So getting really specific feedback is crucial.
Yeah. My next one is that it, kind of in the same vein, it also helps build that thick skin that people are always talking about. Like, I hate that analogy, and it drives me crazy. It's such like a catchphrw that people throw out there, like, oh, if you want to be a writer,
it makes me think of elephants.
Yeah. Love elephants. Like, nothing against elephants.
Everyone has elephant skin. Like,
yeah, I don't really want that. But no, I think it's a valid, like, I need to find a different way to say that, but it's a valid point that people are going to say things to you unsolicited when you're putting yourself out there and putting out something that you wrote. That's what people do. They have opinions and they share them and they put their feet in their mouths, and they are just not always very, like, they don't have that your perspective. They might just say it and they haven't gotten feedback on that feedback before, and they shouldn't have said it and they don't know that. So it happens. Sometimes it happens without it meaning to. Sometimes it happens intentionally. And I find that if you start out sharing your work with people that you learn to trust, and at the beginning receiving ideally just like gentle feedback in a safe space, maybe it's really just compliments at first, maybe that's what you need, and then eventually as people get comfortable with each other. I think this is what happened with our writing group when we started out in the course.
Yeah, it did.
We didn't want to be mean, we didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so I'm pretty sure we were pretty gentle for a long time, but Eileen pushed us to like also come up with things that didn't work for you and just be really careful with that language, and here's how you can say that well. And when I honestly believe that when you start with stuff that is compliments and feel good, and then slowly introduce like, here's some things that you could like work on, then when we run into someone who just doesn't jive with your style, it's not quite as jarring. It doesn't shake your confidence quite as much. Like, you learn to handle it in a little bit of a slower way, because you'll feel more anchored in your own approach, and you'll have received that, like we were saying before, that consistent confidence building piece of, no, but I know I do this really well. It's not just my best friend telling me that, or my mom. It's like this group of people who have no affiliation to me, who are voluntarily reading my work and saying, no, I really like this aspect of your work, I think is done really well. And you have that. And when you receive some like scathing criticism about other parts that's hard to shake, those safe space critique partners can be a safe haven, because then you can come back to them and say, hey guys, I'm really struggling with this. I received this really difficult feedback and I don't know what to do with it. And they can often help you parse out like what is genuine, what is helpful, and what you just need to leave behind, because there's going to be stuff like that too.
Yeah, you're going to get feedback where you're like, I do not agree with this person at all. And then you'll go to critique group and be like, am I crazy? Like, tell me. And then they'll be like, maybe they'll say, oh yeah, you know, they have a point. And then they'll help you fix it if it's something that you want to fix, or they'll be like, no, like, totally forget about it. Leave that behind. It's one person's opinion. It doesn't define your work.
Absolutely.
So I think it's very important to create like a safe space where you can share feedback, like having a writing group, or having even 1 or 2 writing buddies. It doesn't have to be like a group of like, I mean, what do we have? 6 or 7 people in our group, but not everybody shows up all the time year round.
It's usually 3. Yeah. 3, maybe 4, but there's around 6 of us total if we were to all show up. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a big, huge, scary commitment either. Like, we keep it pretty chill. We often don't actually do the video workshop. We'll just share pages by email, because we all have a life to live. Yeah, better than nothing. Exactly. And actually, my other point is kind of tied to that. When we get into those calls, when we do actually start having those conversations, I find one of the other most beneficial pieces is like feedback and that opportunity to converse together about a shared reading experience generates
Yeah.
brainstorming like nothing else. Like the number of times you and I have sat down and just like talked through something that we've both read and figured out like how we can fix it. So many good ideas for approaching it and like options. It's just like
Options,
it
that's the
works.
thing, options.
Right. It works every time. It's so good.
Yeah, I think honestly, having brainstorming and feedback sessions with other writers has probably single-handedly saved every draft I've ever written. Like ever.
Yeah.
Like even stuff like simple stuff, even. And I will be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then I do it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I might think of that.
Yeah.
But that's because you can't think of everything.
Yeah.
Not magical.
Yeah, this one, I noticed it the most actually when I was doing the graphic design portion of my degree. Like I've noticed it for the writing side, but when I started doing the design stuff more in class and in person with other classmates working on similar projects, just the amount of power that lies in like showing something what I'm working on and then being like, what don't you like about it? I'm not really sure. So then they say, well, what if you tried moving this over here just a little bit, or like change this color just slightly so that it matches this better? And that all of a sudden, like you make that one tiny change and all of a sudden it's like a completely different design to you and it looks so much better. That's what other people's conversation around my work seems to do for me as well, where someone might just say one thing about a character. Like Jenny does this to me all the time and I love her to death for it. She'll say something about like insight into a character that I didn't even realize was true.
Yeah, she does that to me too. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I just got a freebie.
Right? Like she knows my work better than I do. Like what is happening? It's my favorite thing. And I think that takes me nicely to my last point of other people's perspectives, which help us identify whether we're hitting the mark, which is when they will say like, oh, I see this in your character. And like, you're like, yes, that's exactly what I was going for. Nailed it. Or whether we're missing the mark, because we are often the worst judge of our output. Like we're always, saying like, oh no, this is terrible. You can read it if you want, but it's trash. And like, that's not true. And we know it's not true, but we still say it. And it can go the other way as well. And I see this most often when we're blinded by our own intentions, that like, well, I didn't mean to say it like that. They took it the wrong way. That's such a common response to when we're critiqued about how we communicate something. I use it myself. I've heard other people use it all the time. It's just a very like common defense mechanism. We feel bad. We want to take that burden off ourselves, so we find a way to excuse it. But when it comes down to communication, our intentions don't mean a whole lot anymore. Like the word is out there, the reader has taken it, they've read it, and if they're on the other side consistently misunderstanding what we're trying to say, we need to look at how we're saying it and what we're doing wrong. Because when it's like multiple people are like, no, that came across this way to me, and you're like, well, I didn't mean it that way. You've done something that's miscommunicated what you were trying to say, and it's on you to fix that. It's not on the reader to understand you differently. It's up to you to reframe what you were trying to say in a way that the majority can better understand. And that's really hard without like constant like community, understanding how other people work, right?
Yeah. And I think too, for that, all you have to do is like look at the comments on social media of someone's book. Like we've all seen it. Something goes viral from a book you've never heard of, and there's a whole group of people talking about this, and then the author's in there going, well, I didn't mean it like that. Ooh. Yeah. Like that's like every author's like worst nightmare. Some of them were like pretty legit complaints. I've seen some where I'm like, yeah, you should be on a watch list. Okay. So that's something too, like you don't really want to, you don't want to kind of shoot yourself in the foot with your work. Like you don't want to not fix that scene because you don't believe people's feedback. And then when it goes out into the world, you get like that kind of reaction. You don't want that. People have like, the internet has like a short-ish memory, but like if it's on the internet, it's on there forever.
Right.
So.
It's not that short.
Not that short. Yeah, exactly. And I think how we can improve our own writing very easily is just by reading and critiquing other people's work. It's like a foundational step, and I honestly didn't even know it existed until we did the writer's studio together. I was like, feedback? What the fuck is that? What's that gonna do? Anyway, so once I learned and I started going for feedback, and Eileen told me, I told her I was so scared to get feedback. I was so anxious about it. I was like, they're gonna be mean to me, because hey, if anyone's been the weird horse girl who wrote stories in school, you know what I'm talking about. There's that little girl who's like, they're not gonna like what I wrote. And having people start gently was totally the way.
Yeah.
And it was just insane. Like, if I were to look at my pages from the writer studio before I started getting feedback to the stuff I write now, like, you maybe recognize me, but like, very massive difference in the quality and everything too. So I wouldn't have improved if I hadn't subjected myself to doing that. It's so uncomfortable, and no one wants to be uncomfortable. Like, none of us want to. But this is one of those things, if you want to be a writer and you want to be a published author, like, you do have to get through it and like build up that thicker skin. Or, you know, what's better, building up resilience is what you're really doing.
There you go.
So that you can handle the feedback from like the outside world, from the people that don't know you. Right. So that's important. And part of the process of being a writer is learning how to craft. So like, sculptors require feedback and practice. What makes us any different? Just because it's the written word doesn't mean it doesn't need to be shaped and sculpted into the final product, right?
Sure.
And if you're still doubtful about feedback, I will appeal to the ego of us all. Giving good feedback makes you a better writer. Be selfish, get in there, give feedback so you can be better.
Be selfish, get in there. I love that.
Well, I'm just like really giving her with the advice today. Like, don't be an asshole, be selfish. Like, I sound... Oh, this is very contradictory. What are we supposed to do?
We need to make some t-shirts is what we need to do with some of those one-liners.
I would love a t-shirt that says, don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole.
I can wear it to work every day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, man.
Well, now we'll talk about how you actually give feedback.
Right.
Because this is the thing I think a lot of people struggle with. And like, a little story time, I exchanged pages with someone once on like Twitter. And I liked their pages a lot. And they told me they were querying or something. And but I read it and I went, oh, like, I don't think this is quite ready to be like queried, because it was kind of starting in the wrong spot. And so like, the second chapter she sent me kind of should have been the first chapter. And I was like, yeah, so like, I just think like, if you did that, it'd be like way stronger. And like, I was very nice when I gave her the feedback, and she was like, okay. And then I got her feedback on mine, and it was not as kind. And I was like, oh, I can't tell if that was just because you didn't know how to give feedback or you didn't like my feedback. But I didn't get a lot of it on that page exchange.
Yeah.
But that happens too. And not everyone knows how to give great feedback.
Right.
So that's something else to consider too.
Yeah. Giving feedback is, well, I should say it this way. Giving feedback is easy. Giving helpful feedback is really hard.
Yes.
Like, anyone can say their opinion on something and that counts as feedback, but it might be useless to me. So how do you craft your feedback so that it's thoughtful and helpful and kind? Because that in and of itself is an art form. And I would say people across every craft, art, genre, and industry, regardless, everyone's bad at it, at the start, at least. And this is really front of mind for me. I've been in writing classes recently, and in a lot of them, people like to debate about, this comes up so often, whether they'd rather have an editor who is kind or an editor who is honest, as though those are the only two options that you can get. And
you can be nice but a liar.
Yeah.
Or you can be truthful and a dick.
Yeah.
What do you want?
That's your choices. So, right?
Yeah,
so I
the two.
I am lugging my soapbox out here today to scream at you through a megaphone that you can have both, you should have both, and if your editor can't give you both, I firmly believe that they are not doing their job. And if I get blacklisted for that, that's fine. But I think that's a fair perspective to have.
I agree. Yes.
Like, seriously.
Have some expectations for the person you're paying to go over your work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they need to deliver too.
Yeah.
Right?
They can be professional, and being professional means being, respectful. And if you feel like they're not doing that, then that's a problem.
That's one of those times where you say, hey, you're fired.
Yeah. Or
start somewhere new.
If you feel safe enough, like I've done this with some classmates in the past, where they presented some feedback that was pretty harsh. And if I sat with it for long enough, like I could see where they were coming from, but it took me a long time to get over the initial reaction of like, I felt like they just came out and slapped me in the face with it. So I pulled someone aside once and I was like, hey, just wanted to follow up on the feedback you gave me last week. This is how I felt when I received it. It was really difficult for me to kind of take it and unpack it. And at the end of the day, like, I think I understand that you were trying to get at this aspect of it, but just like, it was really hard for me to hear that because it was communicated in such a way that made me really uncomfortable for whatever reason. And the person felt really bad and apologized and asked if they could give me a hug and emphasized that like, well, I didn't mean it that way. But at that point they had apologized. So it was less of an excuse and more of like, they were trying to make me feel better, which, you know, is nice. So like that conversation went really well. And if that conversation is possible, have it, because it's much more worth it than just letting that sit and fester. But if the person is not, they don't respond well to that conversation, or they're just not someone that you can talk to in that way for whatever reason, then yeah, fire them, I guess.
Yeah. Walk away. Sometimes that's the win.
Yeah.
Be like, this person is not the right fit for my work. I'm going to find somebody who is, and, you know, start again, which isn't great, but it happens.
It does, because like we've said before so many times, like so much of this is subjective. So someone might give a bunch of feedback and they think is like totally genuine and honest, and you think is total shit. And it might be because your story is not for them. And that's very valid. And if they can't recognize that themselves and they take on the job anyway, you know, that's a problem. And if you identify that like, we're not clicking, this is not gelling, this is not going well, then hopefully you can identify that early enough in the process and find someone with whom that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I haven't gotten into doing any editing for anybody unless it's like writing group or whatever, because I just think that I'm so like, if it doesn't vibe with me, I'm not really interested in like forcing my way through it. And that's not a way you can't operate as a professional like that. But I mean, to a point, like, yeah, you want them to be the right fit for the story too.
Yeah.
But that's like, if someone wanted me to edit something and they were like, hey, I've got like this memoir, I'd be like, that's so great. That's great. But I won't read it.
Yeah.
Like, I won't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if you come to me and like, hey, I have like a sci-fi romance, I'd be like, say what now? I would love to give that a little look.
Right.
And that's why I'm not actually an editor for like any kind of work, because I am like that. I am fussy.
Well, and the more experience you gain as an editor, the more you can be picky and choosy, I think.
Yeah.
And I guess like that's my first tip on giving thoughtful and helpful feedback, is identifying for yourself which pieces of this are like, acknowledge what's subjective, acknowledge what's your opinion, and whether that needs to go out to the author or not, because half the time it probably doesn't. I bite my tongue on that stuff all the time because it doesn't matter. It's my preference, and it's not fair to judge someone else's work and say like, this is objectively bad, when it's just like, I just don't really like the color blue. It like bothers me. This is not true. I actually love the color blue. I should pick something else. I don't love the color yellow. It's a little bit too bright and happy for me, and I'm a cynic and an introvert and depressed half the time. So it just, you know, kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Which is really funny because you're like my yellow friend,
right?
Like, I consider you like my yellow like ray of sunshine,
and I love that. That's so cute.
Myself, you know, but like, it's funny because you don't even like that color.
I love that so much.
Oh my gosh!
But like,
did we go off topic? I feel like, sorry,
teeny tiny bit.
I'll mute myself for
no,
a bit
no.
so we can get back on topic.
No. We were just talking about subjectivity, and like, just like you have favorite colors, like we have favorite genres, and we have narrative styles. Like, we were talking about a book the other day, I can't remember what it's called, where the narrator was quite distant. You don't really get to know anything about them, but they are narrating the book in first person. And that really bothered you when you read it. Like you said, you didn't gel with it. You did not connect with the character at all, and that bugged you. Whereas I was like, this is a great mystery story. I love how they've committed to this style, and I read it through to the end and really enjoyed it. And that's just like, that happens all the time. We don't necessarily align on the things that we like and don't like. So like, that is maybe the single biggest thing that I want people to think about if they're going to be giving feedback to somebody on whether it's writing or something else. Identify for yourself as much as possible what your bias is, what your subjective preference is, and then try and work through, is this feedback really helpful, or is it just
my preference coming out?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Is that how I got the man-hater nickname? It's like a preference thing. Because no one else seemed to mind. So I was like, this has got to be a preference thing.
Gotta be.
Gotta be. Yeah. It's funny though, that nickname's kind of gone like around my friends and family circle, and now it's like it's actually a nickname for me.
Now it's a title.
It started as something negative, and now I've turned it into like, yeah, so what if I'm a man hater? Yeah. I love my man.
Yeah.
It's not the other ones. I'm just kidding. Mostly.
No, mostly. Speaking of men, but like in an entirely different context. My next one is my next point for like thoughtful, helpful feedback is just I drew this from my husband and I were watching some formal debates on YouTube recently because he was into this one YouTuber at the time, and I happened to be in the room, so I was watching this with him. And in one of the debate arrangements, one of the debaters did this thing where they never failed to respond to the other party with some genuinely positive statement first before going into their argument, like whether that was picking a point or a fact that the person brought up that he agreed with, or highlighting some feeling or sentiment that the person had shared. And like he would say like, no, I empathize with that. Like that's such a real feeling. I understand where you're coming from. And here's your experience that you shared. And like, that makes so much sense that you're feeling that way. Like just validation before then saying, here's where I think this is a bit off and here's why. And it was just really humanizing and admirable to watch him do that. Even when the other person was being pretty disrespectful or like getting in his face about something, he was just genuinely like, you know, like I understand where you're coming from and that like this is something that really bothers you because of this thing that happened. And like, I get that. And that totally makes sense. This approach doesn't work though. And here's why. And like, he was just like, he did it so well. And as I was watching this, I was like, oh, that's what I do when I give editor feedback. I always open with something that worked for me, something that I liked. And that's whether it's for writing feedback or any other discipline. Maybe I'm going to take these words back someday, but at this point in time, I have always been able to find something positive to comment on when critiquing another person's work, whether it's like a handful of lines or phrases, the core idea behind the piece, even if it feel like the execution was not well done, the core idea might be like just my favorite thing, or something that like, this is a really cool idea. I think developing this further is like a really good way to go. Keep it up with the story, like just keep writing, because doing it is the practice that you need, right? So why would I tear into it and be like, you know, I like the idea, but everything else is shit? Like, why would I say that? I would never say that to somebody. That is so demeaning and discouraging, and it's not going to make them like go and want to do better. It's going to make them want to give up, and that's not the point of feedback. The point of feedback is to like help people get better. So I'll pick some element. Improvement. Yeah, exactly. So whether that's picking some element of a character or a description on the page or literally just a line or two that like, oh, this is really beautifully written. Even if you feel like it doesn't connect well enough to whatever else is on the page. Like if that line was like, good word choice, I really like this. Like I start there because that's what I would want for myself, because when you start in a place like that, it's a lot easier to swallow the rest. Like if you start in a place of like, so yeah, I read it, and that's the first thing you hear. Okay. I don't want to hear the rest. That doesn't sound good. We're off to a terrible start. I'm done. I've put up my walls. I've closed my ears. I am no longer having this call. Yeah. La la la. Exactly. Whereas if you start with, hey, thanks for sending me this. I really, really enjoyed this aspect of your work and thought it was really well executed. If you don't want to read more from the person, don't say you'd love to see more. Like you don't have to say that. Lie. Right? Yeah. But you can say like, this aspect worked really well. And I think you can really, keep that up throughout the rest of the story. I think that adds a really nice vibe or element or whatever you want to say. And then you can go in and add, and hey, here's some things that I thought you might like to work on or change, or here's some suggestions I have that I think might make this stronger. That's all kind of language you can use to make that feedback palatable, because if you just
Yeah.
go in like swinging so hard, it's not palatable. It's hurtful, even if you don't intend it to be that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I think another thing to consider is like when you're giving feedback, think of it as like you're guiding them to some better choices or better options.
Mhm.
You're not telling them what to do because it's
Right.
ultimately their story, their words, how
Right.
they envision their idea. So you can only guide them on the path. You can be like, "Hey, like this might come across as like racist. I would definitely review this." Like that's
Yeah.
that's one thing. But yeah, and like you kind of want to guide them towards getting better because if you just tell them like you don't want to market like you're a teacher, that's not really what
No.
helps people get better at writing. Like,
No.
yeah, that helps you get better at math, I guess, but like writing
Uh-huh.
is not like that, and
Mhm.
you are sort of training yourself every time you write. And so if you give someone feedback like, hey, like, what are your crutch words? Seems to be that. Like,
Mhm.
maybe go through your manuscript and search for that.
Mhm.
And they do that and they go, oh my God, I used the word that like 3,000
So many
times. Like,
times,
thank you so
yeah.
much for pointing that out.
Yeah.
And so things like that, sometimes you have to say it but you can say it kindly, I think is the thing.
Mhm.
Um, and so when you're giving feedback, I think the thing that makes the difference between thoughtful and like just general feedback is asking yourself what you liked about it, what you disliked about it, and like Elise already said, what's your bias,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So if you're reading it and you're like, oh, I want to say something about this character, something about this character bothers me, but like how should I don't know,
Yeah.
just I don't really like this character. That's not very helpful,
No.
you know? But then if you say, I don't really like this character because he does this or she does that.
Mhm.
And is she supposed to be unlikable? Like, you
Mhm.
can ask these questions too, especially if it's early in the manuscript, because they might not realize it's coming across that way.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to like dive into why. It's one of those things like, um, when someone asks you like what you're doing this weekend, you're like, oh, not much. Or you're like, oh, I'm podcasting with Elise and then I'm gonna go ride in the park. Like it just sounds like a lot nicer, doesn't it?
Mm.
So like, but you have to um expand on it. I guess
Mhm.
that's where I'm going with
Yeah.
this. I just had to go on a tangent first.
No, I
Okay.
think that's valid though.
Yeah, and I think when you dive into those moments and you really think about it and you expand on it, then when you go back and you're working on your own work, you're going to ask yourself those questions. You might not even realize you're doing it. And this
Mhm.
is why feedback is so important because you're going to start changing the way you look at your own writing. And sometimes you might struggle a bit, by the way, guys. There might be a section of time after you start getting and receiving feedback where you're like, oh my God, and you're not quite sure like how do you continue and how do I apply this to my draft, but
Right.
you will get through it, just keep trying.
Mhm.
And that's something to just keep in mind too. It's a
Mhm.
bit of a roller coaster sometimes because you're learning. It's a learning curve.
Yes.
And then another thing I like to find out before I give feedback is like what kind of feedback does that writer need? So like my comments on a first draft that was just finished is going to be really different than someone's like eighth draft
Mhm.
that's like about to get queried.
Mhm.
It's important to be upfront with the writer about what kind of feedback they're looking for. This is a great time for them to be like, hey, like I'm a little anxious about getting feedback. Like, can you be
Yeah.
nice to me?
Yeah.
You're like, yes.
Yeah.
Or you can get someone like me who's like, shred it. Tell me how horrible it is. Everything. But Elise will still put in there like, I love this, yay, because I love her. But like, so you can find out. And like when you're giving feedback, yeah, like for first drafts, like I'm gonna try and be more general, more positive. But like if
Mhm.
Elise sends me like her eighth draft,
Mhm.
I'm gonna get in there and be as strict as I can because I know that she's looking for a bit of a different level of feedback
Yeah.
than someone in a first draft.
Yeah.
That's something to think about. Another
Mhm.
thing is taking into account the genre and the expectations of the genre.
Right.
So I write a lot of romance. I love romance. And I prioritize feedback from those who read romance too.
Mhm.
But I don't discount the comments from someone who doesn't. I just have to remember they may not know what's popular in the genre, and I
Yeah.
may need to go through their feedback and decide what to keep and what to discard.
Mhm.
And that's fine, but that's something to bear in mind. Like, that's why I said earlier, I wouldn't really critique a memoir because, like, I don't really read memoirs.
Right.
So, like, my critique wouldn't be very helpful.
Right.
Whereas, like, if I'm critiquing something that I really enjoy, like your fantasy stories, my critique is going to be different because I read a lot of
Mhm.
fantasy too, and I'm going to be able to speak on that.
Yeah, I think that goes back to a little bit of what we were saying about subjectivity. It's a similar kind of thing, because in the same way that like certain people like certain genres, those certain genre groups are looking for certain things. People who read romance have very specific expectations of how a romance story should go. If everyone dies at the end, it's probably
not a romance.
Not a
romance.
Tragedy. Yeah, that's a different category entirely. You don't just want to surprise them with that, because then they'll probably never pick up a book from you ever again.
Yeah. You don't want to lose trust in the reader by not knowing your genre. That's one of the things.
And that's the same thing with when you're giving feedback. If you're going into a story knowing that like, this isn't my genre, I don't love reading stuff like this, but I'm giving feedback for whatever reason. They know that about me and they still want to hear my perspective, or like I've agreed to do this and I wasn't really upfront about it and now I should be. Just be aware of what aware of what your biases are, aware of what you are going into it expecting or not expecting, and be aware of as much as possible, try and be aware of the expectations of the genre. If you can't spend the time researching the genre and getting to know it beforehand, what I like to do is just flag it at the top, like, hey, this isn't a genre I read very much of. So if some of my comments are coming across as like I'm not understanding where this is supposed to go, and that like I'm not understanding a trope or something like that, just bear that in mind as you read my feedback. And that's all you have to say. You don't have to qualify every little comment, but you can just leave a note for the author and say that like, I don't typically read this, but I'm interested in seeing your work, so I will happily give feedback on this, and you can take what's helpful and leave the rest. I say that to all my clients always. Take what's helpful.
I love it.
And leave the rest. It's
a great way to talk about feedback. And so it's not too overwhelming either. You're like, I don't have to listen to every single thing. That's good. The other thing to consider too is if you're giving sort of bite-sized feedback, or if you're doing an entire manuscript.
Right.
When you're first learning to give feedback and you're first doing it, like I really strongly recommend doing bite-sized feedback, especially getting feedback on your own work. Because if you get feedback on an entire manuscript, that's the first time you get feedback, you're going to be like paralyzed by it.
Yeah.
You're going to just be in a state of like crisis. You're like, oh my God, there's so many things to fix and I hate this and this. And so it's really important to start small, work your way up.
Yeah.
And when you're giving feedback on a whole manuscript, also bear in mind that like a lot of stuff can get lost in a 100,000 word manuscript, for example. So it's really nice to have something at the beginning where you have like your overall thoughts, like a bit like when we critique the first page, we talk like a little overall thoughts at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that's important to do too. And then that way you can add to that as you're working through the manuscript, and the writer has something like all the big pieces have been talked about in like one spot for them to look at. Because when you're doing a whole manuscript, there's just so much more going on. Than if you're doing 10 pages at a time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it can make a huge difference if you've been practicing and you're really aware when you're doing feedback, like how to, or if you're being kind and helpful, or are you just, not doing a great job. It happens. Sometimes I go to do feedback and I'm like, I don't really have any feedback. And I feel terrible. Then I'll be like, I stand back, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of feedback. I just like kind of love this.
Yeah.
And then I'll flag one word. I'll be like, word choice, question mark.
Yeah.
That was my feedback.
Yeah. No, we have those days. We all have those days, and that's totally fine. And when that happens to me, I will often like set it aside for maybe half an hour or maybe a day or like whatever it is I have time for, and come back to it and be like, okay, a little bit of a fresh look. Was I just in a mood? Was I hangry? What's going on?
Was I hangry? Oh yeah. Don't ever do feedback when you're hungry.
Right?
Especially me. I'm not a nice person when I'm hungry.
But if you come back to it and it's like, no, I still like, especially if it's like, no, I still just really enjoy this and have no notes.
Yeah.
Say that. Like, I enjoyed this and I have no notes. Well done. Kudos. Praise be to you. We bow down before you. Like, that's all you got to do. You don't even need to say, like, don't say sorry for having nothing mean to say. Like, you can be nice.
Like, I have nothing constructive, but good work. Yeah. And that happens. If you get that feedback, be like, sweet.
Yep.
Love it when that happens.
It's a
Things
good day.
Are working.
Mm-hmm.
Which definitely brings us into our next section, which is what not to do.
What not to do.
I love a what not to do section.
I think this might be like probably our favorite section.
I love a
Probably.
What Not to Do.
That's what you were
I
saying.
mean,
So
I feel like maybe you might be too young. Do you remember the show What Not to Wear? Because I feel like there's a really specific set of people who were obsessed with certain shows at a certain time, and you're just younger.
okay,
young
I'm
enough
just gonna
that you
I'm just
might not
gonna
have
say
missed it.
for the record that whenever people ask me, do you know the show or do you know the actor? Do you know the character? Do you know the thing? It's like, it could be my age. But mostly it's also that just like, no, I don't know most things because I grew up in a very, specific upbringing sphere.
Yeah.
So like I'm not up to snuff on anything pop culture related before like the last 5 years maybe. And even that
so you
is
probably did not watch
spotty.
What Not to
Never
Wear.
heard of it. No idea what that is.
So it's one of those shows where like your friends and coworkers would nominate you
Oh,
because you
wait.
dressed so badly.
Yeah.
Remember this? And then they would take you shopping and like get them
you a
on.
whole
They'd
new
do
wardrobe?
like a makeover. It was basically like a makeover show. Yeah. And whole new wardrobe. They do the hair and everything. And anyway, I think that's why I love What Not to Do, because I used to love that show. I'd be like, what not to wear? I mean, you'd never know that I ever watched that show because my usual uniform is sweatpants and a crew neck sweater. And if I'm not wearing that, I'm wearing breeches and like a riding shirt. So, I mean,
Hey.
I am not very fashionable, but
Practical though.
right? I mean, I kind of love
Right?
that. I can't believe, see another tangent. I'm going to
Yep.
be quiet now.
What not to do. One of my biggest ones for this is just the language that we use when we're giving feedback. We like to just say things off the cuff and not have to think too hard about it, and like be just like, I just want to say what I want to say. I just want to, be honest. For the record, that's a massive red flag in my books whenever someone says that. It's just like, okay, we're not probably going to be very good friends.
It's like, oh, I'm just a brutally honest
Yeah.
person. I'm like, no, you're
No.
just a dick. And
Yep.
you say that so that people are like, when they get upset, you can be like, well, I'm just being honest. Well, go
Yep.
fuck yourself in your brutal honesty, because have some fucking kindness, people.
Circling back
God.
to our first rule from this episode, don't be a
Don't
dick.
be an asshole. Okay, I'm being quiet again. I'm so
Motto.
sorry.
But yeah, an important note on language, because as we were saying before, you can be honest and still be kind. And that's really important. And like, we're humans, we're human beings. Our feelings get hurt by things. We don't always know what's going to trigger somebody. So I try to be very careful when I'm telling someone how I received their work. My two categories are what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And this is really to emphasize that subjectivity piece that we mentioned before. Because as much as we want to be aware of our bias going into something, we're not always going to catch it. We're not always going to notice. We might notice after the fact. We might not notice at all. So highlighting that, okay, this is feedback about what worked for me personally, allows the writer to receive that in those terms. And for me, it's much more palatable than language like, I liked this, I didn't like this, or, and heaven forbid, you say, this is good and this is bad. Like, nothing triggers me more than hearing this is good or bad, or this is right or wrong in an artistic context.
No such thing in an artistic context.
I was about to say the only thing you can maybe say that for is grammar, but even with grammar, with grammar, writers break those rules on purpose all the time, especially if you're reading poetry, which, as we know, I don't typically read very much of that. But it's very intentional, and people put a lot of thought into why they do that sometimes. Or sometimes they're like, this is just how I write, and I like it that way. And if you add a period there, I don't like it. Doesn't sound right to me anymore. And I might disagree with that as a editor nerd, but it's not my call, and it's my subjective preference. At the end of the day, punctuation is the only purpose of punctuation is to ensure that what you write is understandable to the reader. Like, if you don't put a period at the end of the sentence, but there's a paragraph break, chances are they're going to notice that it's the end of a sentence, and they're not just going to read on to the next paragraph as though it's, the same thing. Like, people have brains, and they're sometimes smart with them. So,
okay, this is the thing I also just want to pipe in about feedback is like, remember that your reader does in fact have a brain. You don't have to spoon feed them everything. And if you
Right.
feel like you're being spoon-fed when you're giving feedback, it's important to be like, hey, like, I think it's a show not tell thing, right? That's where you can be like, this is a show not tell section. And like, some of us just need to hear that. Like, sometimes we're like, oh yeah, like, you're having the brainwave, so you're typing it, and then later someone reads it, it's like, well, maybe you should show us the character feeling that, instead of being like, Chief felt like it was hot out. You know, like, show her being all sweaty, you know? And that's something to consider too when you're giving and receiving feedback.
Yeah. So all that to say, you can still be kind while you're being honest. And then language as well. Here's another one I think I used earlier. Like, I feel that the piece would be stronger if you changed this aspect, or if you did this instead of this. That's still very much couching it in the language of, this is my preference, this is what I think, do with that what you will. Like, you're not saying, this is wrong, this is bad, you need to change it. Like, no one's going to be receptive to that. No one likes to hear that. So yeah, that's my first one. And then my second one is pretty simple. Like, there's no need to hunt for something to criticize. Like we said before, if you honestly just enjoyed the piece and you sit with it for a bit and you're like, yeah, I don't think you need to change it to make it better, I just really liked it, that's allowed. Sometimes if I'm in that space and I still want to be helpful, I'll bring up questions, curiosity that I had as I was reading, or like, I wonder this about this character and if this will come up later. And I try to be very intentional about those, and about clarifying to the author that I don't need an answer to that right now. Maybe I want it on the next page. Like, we'll often say that with our first page critique. Or maybe I just want it eventually, that this is a question I'm asking as a reader, and I think it's important that the reader gets an answer to this eventually. By the end of the book, I want to know the answer to this. That's valid feedback as well. It might not be helpful for these pages that you're reading in the moment, but it could be helpful later. It could be something that the author maybe didn't think of, or forgot that they wanted to address that, and so they go back and add it in. So like, asking questions can be really helpful to inspire them or remind them of something. And that can be just as valuable as a concrete suggestion to change A to B. Yeah. Those are my two big ones.
I feel like I'm kind of all over the place with my thoughts, but one of the things that I hate when I get feedback that I don't consider helpful is getting something like, wow, love it, maybe make the main character more intense. And I'm like, how so? Like, how did it come across to you where they weren't intense enough or whatever? Where are they boring? Are they, is it at their actions? Is it the dialogue? Is it do they lack motivation? Do they lack, presence on the page? Are they too cardboard cut out? There's so many questions that are going to run through a writer's head when you get broad feedback like that. And that's the thing, break it down, expand on it. What do you love about it? What do you like about the dialogue, the characters, the setting? Are all of those things happening in the chapter you're looking at? What strikes you as interesting? What could be fixed? What is clunky sounding? Read a sentence out loud if it sounds wrong to you, and be like, hey, maybe read this out loud, it sounded a little clunky to me. However, and then if you're thinking, in genre, like, does this read like young adult when it's supposed to be an adult romance? Like, those are things to also consider. And that's like, it could be, it's a bit of a broad question. Does the whole thing read like this? Maybe it doesn't, but you'll want to maybe make a note in there saying like, hey, like, if this is going to be for like adult audiences and it has adult content, you may want to change like this, or like age up your character, something like that. And those are all the suggestions. And like Elise said, asking questions is a good way to do it, especially if you're not really sure exactly what is not working for you, and you're maybe not sure that they know either. And so you can ask a kind of an open-ended question about it. And that can help them, lead them to the right answer. You might not have the answer, but it might help lead them to the right answer.
Yeah, or to help them explore it in some way. And then the other thing I wanted to say on your note about broad feedback that on its own is not really helpful. I've run into pieces where I end up leaving a broad piece of feedback because it's like, this character is consistently doing this thing or acting in a certain way, and I don't think that's constructive to what you're trying to do with the character. And then because that's such a broad thing of like, well, it's throughout the whole thing, so I like fix it all. That's it's not that it's unhelpful so much as it's overwhelming in that context. Like, sometimes it's just unhelpful, but with something broad like that where it's true, it applies to the whole thing, but that's just really overwhelming of like, okay, well, where do I start? In that case, I try to give specific examples. So if I have a broad piece of feedback that covers the whole thing, I flagged this in 3 different spots in my comments to show you what I mean. And then emphasizing if this is like prevalent throughout other areas of the piece, or if it's like, it's just these 3 spots, like clarifying that can be really helpful. So if you're going to leave something broad, that's fine, as long as you show it and make it obvious to the other person what you mean. Because if it's just a broad statement, then we can't do a whole lot with that.
Support your hypothesis.
Yeah. We're going back to high school, guys.
Yeah. And now we have to talk about it, how to handle feelings of jealousy or inadequacy, because this seems to be something that is like rampant among writers. I think, are we the most insecure group of artists out there? It's very possible.
I don't think so.
But it is something I see a lot with people, or I'll see authors on social media, like just not being able to be happy for other authors. And like, there's room for all of us, and there's a reader for all of us. So I think that's something to firstly think that. It's not like you have to beat everybody. It's not like a race.
No.
And yeah, I think that's really important to start with, because I see it a little bit. People get really competitive, and I'm like, listen, I don't think this is the kind of, if you're in this to be competitive, you're kind of in the wrong art form. I wouldn't say writing's great for that. Maybe pick up a sport if you feel the need to be competitive. That's what I do. Take my competition out elsewhere, and I don't play board games because that's not fun for anybody. So I think if you're really a competitive person, you got to have an outlet for that. That's maybe not writing.
Right. That's fair. Oh man. Yeah. Feelings of not measuring up, feelings of inadequacy. I think everyone's pretty familiar with feelings of just being an imposter, of like, I don't fit in here, I don't belong, I'm not actually good at this, all of those kinds of things. And I want to emphasize that these are human feelings, and that's maybe an obvious point, but what I mean by that is, at the heart of it, is that these feelings are normal. I think it can be really easy, I've seen this in the writing community because that's where I spend a lot of time, it can be really easy to almost demonize that and say like, oh, if you're feeling jealous, then you're a bad person and something like that. It's like, that's not true. It's the same thing with anger. Like if you're feeling angry, you're not bad for feeling angry. You probably have a good reason to feel angry, or you have something that led you there. The feeling just doesn't just come up randomly for no reason for the most part. So that's the same with jealousy and inadequacy. Like maybe it's just a narrative that you've been told for your life in various different ways, and it comes up here, and that's really hard. And when it does come up, I just want to emphasize that it doesn't mean anything about who we are as people. I think the most important piece is that we don't stay in that feeling. We don't just like accept it as this is true and real about me, and this is all I'll ever be, and I'm going to stay here forever. Like that's not a nice place to be stuck. I don't want that for anybody. That sounds really awful. And it's not a productive place to stay by any stretch. Because yes, as much as some people have a natural affinity or a talent for different arts and things, writing can be learned. You can learn and grow and get better at it, whether you start in a place of being good at it from the beginning or not. So feeling those things now and again is part of the human experience. It's okay. It's also something we can work on. And I think it's really important to do that. So that's my other soapbox for the day. And then I guess strategies, like my first thing is like those feelings are normal. So this is, I feel like I'm using therapy methods right now. Like those feelings are normal. You are valid. And I want to validate you for having those feelings. You, the general you. And then when things come up for me like that, I like to vent to a friend. Maria and Maya have been on the receiving end of that an ungodly amount of times. And they will inevitably remind me of my worth and the value I bring to the world or the writing world or wherever it is that I feel like I'm struggling. And I always find that really helpful. And then when I get really stuck with a feeling that like I cannot shake and talking to friends is still not like they're saying all the right things and it's just not getting through to me and I'm stuck in this place, I take it to therapy with me and investigate it a bit deeper. Because even if it feels like, oh, why would I take, my writing stuff to therapy? That feels like not a big enough deal, or it doesn't really matter. When I go into those kind of more things that feel more surface level, or like this is really bugging me and it doesn't feel important enough, but I still want to get to the bottom of it, we investigate it and it always goes deeper than that. It always goes to something bigger. Like it's just the way that we react to things emotionally is so interconnected. Where do those feelings come from? What is my body trying to protect me from by feeling this way? It can be really helpful to just untangle those knots, get some perspective, and then that self-awareness helps us do better. It just makes such a big difference. And then to one of my earlier points, art is subjective, and that line can be your armor if it needs to be. I think some people do that. They take it, they're like, art is subjective, so you can't tell me anything is wrong with my stuff because it's just what I like and that's what I'm going to do. And as much as sometimes I find that annoying personally, you're totally allowed to do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't want to change my art. I like it the way that it is, and this is for me. And I don't need to listen to someone else's subjective opinion about changing it. You don't. You do not have to change your personal art to suit someone else's preferences. Nothing is for everyone. If you do want to serve a particular audience, get to know that audience. And people will always find a way to have a problem with something, regardless of what it is. Yeah. So if you can get to a place where you're confident enough with the amount of effort you're putting into it for your particular audience, my friend, you are doing enough. And that's all we can do.
And something I would love to add is that as long as you're making work that you're proud of, you'll be happy with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you should be proud of what you're putting out there. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time battling ADHD before I knew I had it. And I was afraid to put my work out there. And I wasn't even proud of some of the stuff I shared. I was just like, well, I have to share it. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. But then now that I've been I actually took kind of a writing break. Actually, didn't work on a lot of stuff for a while. And when I came back to it, I was a bit like, I want this book to be really good, not for someone else. I want this book to be really good for me. I want this book to come out and I can say, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the work I put in. I'm proud of how it turned out. Not everyone's going to like it, but I like it.
Yeah.
And that's something to think about too. When you feel like there's too much feedback or you're afraid of people's thoughts or you're having imposter syndrome, what do you want your work to look like?
Yeah.
What would make you proud of it?
Yeah.
Because that is something I have struggled with. So passing on my little knowledge for you guys.
I love that.
Right. And here's my life hack for the jealousy inadequacy thing. So I've obviously been a horse girl like my whole life. And it goes without saying, it's really a sport for the wealthy. All right, especially when you get into the competing. Like, actually, I could go into a whole rant about this, but I won't. It's not that expensive to keep horses if you live on property and they're not doing anything. But if you start showing, and then there's vet bills, and then there's this and tack and all this stuff. So it gets quite expensive. And I've still climbed the levels despite not having the same opportunities as a lot of other riders. I live in a wealthy area. So I think it's a bit skewed out here. And when you watch this stuff on social media, it looks super luxurious. But anybody with horses can tell you, if you're actually doing the work, it's not super luxurious. It's so fun though. And it's very easy to be jealous of me seeing some kid who's 12 jumping around a class I could only ever dream of riding in on a horse that's worth $500,000. And that sucks, but that's life. And so the trick that I started years ago was I would just decide to be happy for them. It's one of those things I'm in control of my own thoughts and I am going to be happy for them, because what purpose does my envy serve except making me feel worse and making me feel like, if only it's not fair, if I could do that, I would be so good. That's probably true. But that's life, man. Unless I win the lottery. And would I prefer for my friends and acquaintances be happy to see me succeed, or do I want them to be bitter? I want them to be happy for me. So I need to put effort into me being happy for other people as well, because there's room for all of us at the table, and you don't need to showcase your own insecurities by ripping apart someone's work or, taking it to social media.
Yeah.
Like, fuck that shit. It's just it's tiring to be that kind of person. Just save yourself the energy and don't do it. And if someone rips apart your work and it's not because the work is bad, like, it'll happen to you and you'll know when it happens because it feels not good. I'm just here to tell you that if it happens, your attitude should be fuck it, whatever, because there's 8 billion people in the world and more coming every day. So one person taking out their bitterness on your work is hurtful, but it's ultimately their problem and it's not yours.
Yeah. There it is.
That's the tea on crafting good feedback for your fellow writers. Don't be an asshole. And for more of the Tea Grannies, you can join our Patreon. Follow us on our socials at the Tea Grannies Podcast, and we'll see you guys soon. Happy writing.